There's something about movie theaters that stirs the imagination. Maybe it's the darkness, the quiet before the film starts, or the fact that strangers gather in silence to experience something together. But every now and then, someone steps into a theater and walks out with more than just popcorn and a good story. These 7 true creepy movie theater stories, told by those who lived them, remind us that sometimes the scariest things happen when the lights are off and the screen begins to flicker. Mallory Jennings had just turned 16 when she got her first job at a local movie theater in Charleston, South Carolina. It wasn't a fancy theater, just 6 small screening rooms, a snack bar, and a dimly lit lobby that smelled of butter and soda. Her first few weeks were uneventful. She swept floors, sold tickets, and checked in on screenings. One slow Tuesday night, Mallory was assigned to do a closing check-in theater for after the last movie ended. She stepped inside with a flashlight and did a sweep of the rows. As she turned toward the back, her beam landed on something strange, an elderly man sitting completely still in the corner. She apologized for interrupting and told him the movie was over, but he didn't respond. Thinking he might be asleep or hard of hearing, she walked up and tapped his shoulder. Her hand went straight through the figure, and the seat was empty. She backed away, heart pounding, and ran out of the room. When her manager went to check minutes later, the theater was completely empty. Other employees later told her that several guests had mentioned seeing a man matching the description, always in the same seat, always alone, during late showings. They called him the regular, but no one knew who he really was. In Denver, Colorado, 19-year-old college student Ethan Walker loved horror movies and often went to midnight screenings alone. One night, he went to see a slasher film in a nearly empty theater. About halfway through the movie, he felt something tug on the hood of his sweatshirt. He turned, expecting to see someone behind him, but the row was completely empty. He brushed it off until it happened again, stronger this time, like someone yanking hard. Ethan stood up with his phone flashlight and searched the row, thinking a prankster had snuck in. No one was there. As he sat back down, he caught a glimpse of a shadow darting across the aisle. There were no kids in the theater. At the end of the movie, the usher told him the back rows were closed for repairs and shouldn't have had anyone seated there at all. Ethan swore never to sit in the back again. In rural Oregon, a small independent theater ran a summer program for kids. Olivia Brooks, a former camp counselor, volunteered to chaperone the group during a showing of an animated movie. Everything went smoothly until one of the little girls, Madison, came back from the restroom crying. Olivia knelt beside her and asked what was wrong. Madison said a man with too many teeth had spoken to her near the hallway. Olivia's stomach dropped. She and another counselor checked the hallway but found no one. Later, they reviewed the camera footage. At the time Madison claimed she was in the hallway, a strange flicker appeared on the footage, static and distorted images, but no man could be seen. Madison never attended another movie with the group. Brady Simmons worked as a projectionist in a historic theater in upstate New York. The building dated back to the 1920s and still used some of the original architecture, including a grand balcony that hadn't been open to the public for decades. Brady's job included inspecting the old projection room, which was connected to the sealed-off balcony. One night, he heard what sounded like footsteps and faint humming coming from the balcony. Curious, he unlocked the door and stepped inside. Dust hung in the air, and old velvet seats lined the rows, untouched. But someone or something was walking across the back row. Brady called out, but the humming stopped. Then he saw her. A woman in a flapper dress, her face blurred like an overexposed photo, standing at the edge of the balcony. She turned toward him, tilted her head, and vanished. He never went back into that room again. Cameron Ellis was just 12 years old when his parents let him see his first PG-13 movie alone with friends. It was a coming-of-age drama, and the group of boys sat near the middle of the room. About halfway through the film, Cameron noticed a woman in the front row who kept turning around and staring. Not once or twice, but continuously, almost as if she were tracking them. Her face was pale, her eyes wide and unblinking. Cameron whispered to his friend Dylan, who said he hadn't seen anyone down there. When Cameron pointed again, she was gone. But 5 minutes later, the same woman appeared in the back of the room, behind them. She didn't move, just stood in the shadows. The boys left the theater in a hurry. When Cameron later asked the staff if there had been anyone else seated nearby, they confirmed there hadn't been. A week later, he returned with his family and saw the woman's photo hanging on the wall, a black and white portrait of an actress who had died in a fire that destroyed the theater in the 1950s. In Austin, Texas, 27-year-old Ellie Turner worked night shifts at a modern cinema complex. One evening, a storm rolled in, and the power flickered briefly. After the backup generator kicked in, Ellie went to Theater 6 to restart the film. As she entered, she saw a single person in the middle row, wearing a hoodie and sitting perfectly still. She apologized for the delay and restarted the projector. A few minutes later, she returned to check on the screen quality. The figure was gone. Thinking they'd left during the outage, she shrugged it off. But when she went back to the control room, she saw something on the theater camera feed. The figure was back. Only now they were standing near the front, staring up at the screen. She zoomed in and noticed the figure had no visible face. She alerted security, but when they went in, no one was there. They later discovered the camera system had been offline during the power flicker, and the footage Ellie saw no longer existed. Her co-workers believed her, though, because others had reported seeing the faceless person before, always during storms, always in Theater 6. Finally, there's the story of Nathan Carter, a filmmaker from Atlanta, Georgia, who spent years documenting haunted locations for his indie series. When he heard about an abandoned drive-in theater 2 hours from his hometown, he jumped at the chance to visit. Locals said it had closed in the 1980s after a series of unexplained accidents and a fatal fire. Nathan brought a camera crew and set up camp near the projection booth. That night, as the team filmed B-roll under the stars, the large screen lit up on its own. No equipment was connected, no power source nearby. A grainy black and white film began to play, footage no one recognized. It showed empty streets, flickering lights, and finally, a close-up of a man screaming with no sound. Then the screen went black. Moments later, one of Nathan's cameras exploded with a burst of static, and the team fled. When they reviewed the footage later, the screen appeared completely dark the entire time, but their audio equipment had recorded a faint voice whispering over and over, "Don't watch alone." Each of these stories comes from ordinary people, teenagers, workers, families, who simply wanted a night out at the movies.